Hey everybody, welcome to House Groups after our week off at the Ash Wednesday service last week. We are so excited that you can all join us. Before we dive into our video teaching tonight, I wanted to give a couple of quick announcements about some changes in dates for things coming up. So next week, as some of you might already know, we're not going to be having house groups. We're going to have a small group bonding week. And so your leaders will all talk to you about going out and doing something fun together as a group next week instead of having our programming on Wednesday night. So that's the first thing to know. Secondly, we're changing some of the dates in March because of construction at church. We were originally going to have large groups on March 7th, but because of construction and room availability, we're not going to be able to do that. So instead, we'll be having house groups on March 7th, and then we will be having our large group on March 14th. Our next announcement is about our summer camps. Camp registration opens this Saturday at 10 a.m. We have two camps for high schoolers in the summer. Our first is Mission Houston, which is June 17th to the 22nd. And our second is Summit, which is July 21st through the 27th. So we'd love to have you join us for a camp this summer. Make sure you get online this Saturday to get yourself registered. So tonight, Matt Ferris is going to be giving our video teaching. A lot of you probably know Matt. He was on Summit. He's brought a lot of you to camp. But he is our college ministry director and our student leadership director. And we are so excited to have him on our team and excited to hear what he has to share with you all tonight.
So we open up in Matthew 22:34 with Jesus talking to some Pharisees. The Pharisees decide that they want to try to trip up Jesus and try to get him to say the wrong thing. And so they ask him the question, what is the greatest commandment? They're expecting Jesus to say an answer, to pick one of the over 600 commandments that are found in the Old Testament. And then they were going to say, well, what about this one? What about that one? But instead, Jesus decides to flip the script. He decides to make it about something else. And Jesus decides to answer, well, the greatest commandments are these. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You see, Jesus, instead of picking one of the commandments, decides to say, you know what? Actually, these two cover everything else. If you want to boil down all of these commandments, all these over 600 Old Testament laws, you can boil them down to these two things. Love God and love others. It actually kind of reminds me of when I was in driver's ed. When I was a sophomore, I was in driver's ed, and it was the most boring class in the world. And honestly, I don't really remember a lot about it. But I remember on the last day our teacher told us, if you want to be a good driver, if you want to be a safe driver, all you have to do is be a defensive driver. Now, what she wasn't saying is that if I'm a defensive driver, I don't need to stop for stop signs anymore, or I can speed all I want on 35W. Instead, what she was saying is, all of these rules and ideas that we've taught you in this class, they can be summed up by one thing: be a defensive driver. In the same way, Jesus is saying, all of these laws, all these ways that as Christians we're supposed to live our lives, we can boil those down to two things: love God and love others. Years after Jesus died and then rose again, one of his disciples or followers, John, writes a letter. And in that letter, he's trying to tell some Christians what the best way to live their life is. He's trying to give them encouragement and direction. And in this letter, John says that one of the best things we can do as Christians, one of the things that we're honestly supposed to do, is love others. And John goes so far as to say that when we love others, we know God better. And if we don't love others, we can't really claim to be followers of Christ. And I want to be clear here. I think we all have ideas of what love is. But the love that John and Jesus is talking about isn't this Hollywood, Hallmark, hot pink, romantic comedy kind of love. Instead, it's a whole different brand of love. In fact, John says if you want to know what this love looks like, you don't have to look any further than the life of Jesus. Which means that the love that we're supposed to give as Christians is meant to be sacrificial. It's meant to hurt a little to give. It's meant not to be easy. But it also is reparative. It brings the kingdom here a little bit, and it shows people God in a really real way. Now, what this brand of love looks like to give for each of you is going to be entirely different for everyone in this room. But right now we're going to go into small groups, and I want you guys to talk about what that might look like to give a love that shows people a little bit of who God is. And you can use what Jesus says in Matthew as some guidelines that you can love God and love others. And you can use what John talks about in his letter, that you can give a love that reflects Jesus' love for us. But my hope is that whatever you guys talk about tonight can bleed into your lives this week. Thank you, and have a great small group.